Russia breaking news: the ruling class in Russia is starting to doubt Putin. CIA Director William Burns said on Thursday that the Russian elite are becoming increasingly concerned about President Vladimir Putin's judgment, especially in light of a brief mutiny that caught the Kremlin by surprise last month. The mutiny revealed fissures in Putin's control, which the CIA is trying to exploit, Burns said. The first week alone, over 2.5 million people watched a CIA video meant to recruit Russian informants. Burns, speaking at the Aspen Security Forum, said that the incident revived some deeper questions about Putin's judgment, his relative detachment from events, and his indecisiveness. Burns stated that Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and top Russian General Valery Gerasimov were the primary targets of the day-long mutiny led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the mercenary Wagner Group. Prigozhin had previously been vocal in his criticism of such officials, though he maintains that he never intended to insult Putin personally. The fact that Wagner's forces were able to move freely across a large part of Russia, as well as Prigozhin's public criticisms of the Russian war in Ukraine and the corruption of the Russian elite, were major embarrassments for Putin. According to Burns, it exposed some of the significant weaknesses in a system that Putin has built. These flaws were exposed by Putin's misjudgment since he launched this invasion of Ukraine, even if the mutiny hadn't occurred. UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said earlier at the Aspen Forum that the uprising showed cracks in Putin's regime, and this statement echoes his sentiments. Sergei Surovikin, another prominent Russian general, has been accused of being in on Prigozhin's plot to overthrow the government. It's been weeks since anyone has seen Surovikin. I don't think he enjoys a lot of freedom right now, Burns remarked. Putin has diffused the situation with Prigozhin for the time being by effectively banishing him to Belarus. According to Burns, the Russian leader will try to cut Prigozhin off from the parts of Wagner that he finds useful. Burns, a former U.S. ambassador to Russia, believes that Putin will eventually find a way to eliminate Prigozhin as a means of taking revenge. If I were Prigozhin, I wouldn't fire my food taster, Burns joked. In spite of the rain and cold, thousands of tourists flock to London every summer to watch the horse races at Ascot and the Derby, play tennis at Wimbledon, watch cricket at Lord's and the Oval, and row at the Henley Royal Regatta. The departure of so many East Europeans from key jobs in the wake of Brexit has been cited as a major downer in London this year. Prices at the Royal Overseas League have increased from March, when a double room with breakfast cost £180, to the present, when they are over £300. We were meeting a friend from Melbourne and were shocked to find that soft drinks cost £10 a pop. Meanwhile, the somber tone at Westminster has dampened the season's customary spirit of goodwill. There are 3 by-elections this week, and the Tory government is on edge because they are likely to lose at least one of them, the seat formerly held by ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and possibly all 3. My well-informed friend wanted to know if the problems the Tories are having are as severe as has been reported in the Australian media. Worse, I said, the English are facing these problems because they are still floundering in the mess created by Brexit, with many people still supporting the policies spun to them by Johnson. Scotland, Ireland, and Wales all voted against Brexit, leaving the United Kingdom deeply divided and unable to control inflation. The Labour Party is leading in the polls, but it has no clear plan to win over voters' hearts and minds. Most foreign investors are staying away from Britain at the moment. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese spent the week at the NATO summit in Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania and a former Soviet satellite. Journalists speculated that US Vice President Joe Biden's meeting with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak signaled a new chapter in the special relationship. As a compromise, NATO leaders said that President Volodymyr Zelensky would receive a formal invitation to join NATO once existing NATO members agreed to the terms and conditions, which could take some time and is likely to give Vladimir Putin fresh impetus to continue the war. This communiqué reflected NATO's unanimous support for Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. Trump's likely victory over Biden in the 2016 U.S. presidential election and the subsequent end of American support for Ukraine is something President Putin is banking on. Financial support for Kyiv is high among the more powerful EU members, according to an official EU poll, but interest in maintaining support for Ukraine is low or non-existent in 7 European countries. These 7 countries are Austria, Bulgaria, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Greece, Hungary, and Slovakia. When Zelensky asked for more defense funding, Britain's Defense Secretary George Wallace famously responded, "We're not Amazon," a remark that was quickly disowned by Sunak. Soon after, Wallace resigned and made the outlandish claim that the United Kingdom would be involved in 3 major conflicts within the next decade. There is no clear answer to the question of what will happen if NATO does nothing while Ukrainian forces and civilians take the brunt of frontline fighting. Putin has made no secret of his desire to restore the Soviet-Russian Empire and push NATO beyond its current borders, which now include the extensive frontier between Russia and Finland. NATO's involvement in helping to resolve the situation in Ukraine should be given high priority. The Norwegian Secretary-General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, has been given a contract extension, giving him more time to define and implement a path toward Ukraine's membership. This week, in the Financial Times, Mark Sidwell, a former national security advisor to the UK government and geopolitical advisor to Rothschild and Company, wrote, "Today's threat is Putin's Russia." Already, Putin will find solace in the fact that some Republicans in the United States intend to reduce aid to Ukraine and, presumably, that the 2024 election will yield a president willing to concede land for peace. However, President Zelensky will not give up any Ukrainian territory after the country fought so hard for its independence. Putin's defiance of the September 2014 Minsk agreements between Russia and Ukraine shows that he would view any ceasefire agreement as merely a tactical pause to regroup. He went on to say that after the Vilnius summit, NATO should not take it easy. Jens Stoltenberg has one final year as NATO Secretary-General and must secure 3 commitments for Ukraine. More weapons now to support this year's counteroffensive. Long-term support for developing the advanced capabilities to repel and thus deter future Russian aggression. And that guaranteed roadmap to NATO membership. Excellent point made. However, the United States and Europe also have other obligations. The most crucial is to increase the severity of current sanctions against Russia. Putin is currently working to sidestep many of these restrictions, in part with the assistance of OPEC members such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and also India. But Russian businesspeople are constantly devising new ways to get around sanctions, and they're making a killing doing it. Numerous instances come to mind. American and European businessmen are willing participants in one of the most audacious schemes involving the automobile industry. Middle-class Russians have a penchant for American and European automobiles, but importers such as BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Cadillac, Ford, and General Motors have all closed their doors in Russia. Clever German, Italian, and East European businessmen have teamed up with Russians in recent months to export used vehicles to Russia along 2 major routes, one through northern Germany and Belarus, and another through Turkey and the Caucasus, with Armenia serving as the main trading point. The Financial Times looked into the rise in GDP and found that the country had received millions of dollars in motor trades. Many of the vehicles were declared total losses in their home countries before being acquired, exported, and finally restored at makeshift factories in Russia, which is worrying for the ultimate Russian buyers. The trade, which has been effectively described as a new Silk Road to circumvent sanctions, appears to be largely unchecked.